everybody, Sean with Avid American Vets in Defense of Democracy. I'm really excited today to have Seth Hettena with me. Seth's a veteran national security correspondent and writer, journalist who covers the world of intelligence, national security, and special operations forces. Of course, I really wanted to have him on because this stuff is like, I love this stuff. I'm a former CIA analyst and Marine, so like it's right up my alley. When I saw his Substack, I was like, oh, this guy is writing some really interesting stuff. So wanted to have him on. You can find his writing and podcasts on his Substack page. It's called the After Action Report. Highly recommend that you go on there and read some of his writing. He's got some really interesting podcasts, which we're going to talk about uh, in a few minutes. So with that, Seth, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Excited to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and so just to start, I just wanted to start because kind of this always interests me. How did you get kind of go down this road? How did you get into this world of covering intelligence and special operations? I know you started as more of a traditional journalist. You worked for AP and then you
Yeah.
migrated over. Yeah, why don't you like walk us through that evolution of how you got to where you are today?
Well, I've always had an interest in it, just going back to college. Um, but it really started when I moved to San Diego, which was right around 2001. And they threw me into covering the military. Uh, you know, September 11th
Who
happened.
who is
And
who is they? Was that
well,
AP or
sorry, yeah, came out here with the AP, and I'd
okay?
been with the AP for several years before that. And I
Okay.
spent, 6, 7 years here with the AP, covering the military. And that kind of got me into intelligence a little bit because I was writing about the Navy SEALs. Navy SEALs were doing missions with the CIA, and some of those missions went really bad. And there was a kind of a court case that I got involved in where it involved Abu Ghraib and the CIA and all this kind of stuff. And that
And
and
I
that's
saw
kind of
that
how I.
one. I just saw you wrote. That's the one you wrote a book about, right? Down the
Yeah,
line.
yeah. I read a book
Okay.
no one wants to publish, but yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it. And then, I was freelancing for a long time for Rolling Stone and New York Times and other things. And I had all this material from these Navy SEALs who'd kind of given me told me their life stories and kind of bared their souls. I couldn't get this published, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just put it out on Substack, see if anybody's interested. And it just kept going. I found like that there was a kind of a uncovered area involving the Navy SEALs that no one was really writing about them kind of critically and talking about some of the issues that were happening. It was always just this kind of like glorification stuff that you see, and so that's kind of led me back into this where I started, Navy SEALs, intelligence, and all kinds of things, and that's how I'm here.
Okay, and I know from my limited time hanging out with guys like this that there's a lot when you get to talk to them, there's a lot of backstory there that they're and if they're willing to talk about it, there's some pretty interesting conversations that you can listen to or
Yes.
yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm curious how you got into this field. Secondly, want to ask you about your latest article, which you wrote about kind of this whistleblower complaint at the DNI, the Office of the Directorate of National Intelligence. That's Tulsi Gabbard's office. So
Right.
we had this whistleblower complaint. This story's been kind of evolving for several weeks now, I think.
Yep.
And the whistleblower complaint kind of sat for what was it, 8 months in the DNI's office. And when it finally came out and went to Congress, it was heavily redacted. Um, you wrote just recently, you said just today, I think I saw on your site, you said you've been updating the story continually, and you just had a little comment in there. You said it's just kind of hard for me to believe at this point that this isn't some kind of cover up or
Yeah.
attempt to just kind of like bury this whole complaint. But that's just there's a lot of details here, but maybe you can like very briefly walk through the story and where we're at today on this.
Sure. So this starts back in the spring of 2025. I think it's in March, that the NSA picks up a phone call between two foreign nationals who probably are intelligence people. and they were talking about someone in Trump's orbit, someone close to Trump. And that call, then after that, a bunch of things happened kind of right away.
Hmm.
One, according to some reporting from The Guardian, which broke this story or this part of the story, that Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, walks the paper NSA report into the White House and shows it to Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles. And then after that, the report is restricted into secure, that the report is basically restricted to Gabbard's office and very limited distribution, very closely held, and it doesn't get widely distributed. You probably know more about that than I do, how these things are distributed. But that's one piece of it. The other part of it is there's a whistleblower who has knowledge of this conversation. We don't know who this person is because whistleblower laws are designed to protect this person.
Mm.
But this person files a complaint with the Intelligence Community Inspector General saying this report was being withheld for political reasons. It's one of the main
And,
allegations.
and also the inspector generals, so I was trying to look in it. They've been purged. Like Trump purged a lot of them, and then also Gabbard put one of her kind of like someone who's really close to her as someone to like oversee
Yeah,
the inspector general, which is not really how it's supposed to work as designed by
right.
Congress, right? That was another wrinkle that I thought was like, what? This is weird. It just sounded kind of
Yeah,
odd.
there's so many, and the reason I wrote this story is because I couldn't understand what was going on. So when that happens, I like try to kind of write it out. Like, how can I explain this in the most simple terms of
Yeah,
so anybody can understand it? Because if you just do an incremental, so and so said today that this report, it makes no sense, and these things get extremely complicated.
it's
And there's issues of law, there's issues of politics, there's
I
issues of national security and intelligence, and it covers all
100%.
these different
It's
things.
crazy. You'll go
Yeah,
like just executive authority. You'll just be like, what? You'll spend a half a day like
yeah,
going researching executive authority. Like, what does this
yeah.
really mean? Yeah.
So to walk you through it, so this complaint, I mean to get really detailed here, but stop me if I get too much
Up
information.
to
But
you. Like, yeah.
no. I think it's interesting, but I don't know what people's interest limits are. But so this call happens in the spring. The whistleblower actually calls the inspector general shortly after this call is intercepted by the NSA. Um, and then in between that call and then this whistleblower is filing a formal complaint, Tulsi moves one of her uh, close staffers into the inspector general's office. And that this person is there, doesn't report to the inspector general, but reports back to
Yeah.
Tulsi. And
Yeah.
that's the really strange part to
That
that.
seemed like an impropriety. That seemed like something that was not the way it was designed by Congress anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And whether that was because of this report or something else that was going on, we
Yeah.
don't know. But then then the inspector general by law has to review if there's a whistleblower complaint, they have to review it. This is a Biden holdover at this time, and she reviews it, determines that it's a what they call an urgent concern, which is a legal term meaning that it's important, basically, that it
Yeah.
involves some kind of abuse of government authority, a crime, something like that. And that kind of kicks it up. That means Congress needs to see it. And there's two ways Congress can see it. Either um, the the Inspector General can submit it directly um, if they find the report credible, or the whistleblower, if they don't find the report credible, the whistleblower can then take it to Congress. So this report is not found to be credible. They couldn't establish credibility. The report is alleging this super sensitive report comes in. Tulsi Gabbard holds it close, and she did that for political reasons. And the political reasons is the illegal part here, and
Mhm.
and that's what they couldn't establish. They couldn't. There wasn't
Yeah.
enough evidence to establish that. But
And
the
from what I
whistleblower,
read in the press, that seems like that might be, and I don't know. I don't, again, there's a lot of gaps in this, but that might be one of those eye of the whole beholder type things. Like,
totally,
I mean, yeah.
totally,
So
totally. I
anyway,
mean, and you probably know about this more than I do, but these are two foreign intelligence, let's just say they're two foreign intelligence people talking to each other.
Yeah.
There's a good chance they know they're being overheard. And I think in those cases, it's also possible they can just throw absolute gossip or BS out there to poison,
Yeah.
just to stink up the room, right?
I can't say with reports like that, you can get two different people with two very different interpretations or possible raising different
Right,
possibilities, and you just
right,
end up with like, well, I don't, yeah, you can
right.
get into, you can twist yourself in knots on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
wilderness of mirrors, right? Um,
basically.
yeah. So, so the whistleblower has elects to take it to Congress. That's under the law. That's his or her right. But to do that, they need this has been the holdup for 8 months now. Is they need security guidelines because this report is because the NSA is who knows what they're how they're getting this call. Whatever they do is classified 16 different ways till Sunday. And you can't just go in and say, well, we intercepted this call on this and such network, and here it is. So they need security guidelines to limit what can be said in a secure setting. And those guidelines were never provided. They still have never been provided to the whistleblower. And, they've been asking for them like every month or something. And Tulsi's office just refuses to provide them. And to
And these
me,
are things, the whistleblower things are supposed to be expert. Once they determine it, what was the
right,
clause? Like it's
right,
important. They're supposed to go in a timely
right,
manner through the
right,
system to Congress. Yeah.
right. So, I mean, this is like a crisis of Tulsi's own making. First of all, she claims she never saw the report until 2 weeks ago. Other people said they sent it to her. There's all kinds of these conflicting stories. She said she didn't know she had to provide guidelines. Nobody told her. And then other people saying, no, you knew that. So, if she had like had a functioning office, she could have issued security guidelines saying, you know, I mean, just to take the cynical view here, the security guidelines could have shut up the whistleblower. I mean, they could have said, you can only talk about this part of the complaint. You can't talk about, I mean, they could have said whatever they want.
Yeah.
And they just didn't do that for reasons that I don't understand, and instead let this fester. And now it's exploded out into the press, which is the last place you want this to be. And
Yeah.
it just seems to me just like total ineptitude, And at this point, it's so inept. It's like, yeah, yeah, just why are you doing this? Just let's just move on. If it's
Which
not an
takes you
important,
back to the point that it must be something like worth trying to. I
yeah.
don't know.
So
Again, there's a lot of gaps. We don't know what it
right.
is, but
Well, the other
yeah.
wrinkle is that the White House has exerted executive privilege over this document.
Yeah.
And executive privilege means it's a constitutional right the president has to protect communications. So he can have like a conversation with his aides that doesn't have to be immediately.
So hey,
Yeah,
so we just had a brief internet outage, but Seth's going to continue on with his story of the DNI Chronicles
right.
here.
Well, just to bring it full circle,
Yeah.
the White House has kind of um, stamped its foot on this thing, and that's the signal that there's a lot of smoke here. The White House is saying that we don't want Congress to see parts of this for some reason. It's we're missing a piece of the puzzle here, and it sure is starting to look like they're trying to keep it from seeing the light of day.
Yeah. And I just think it's interesting because this is not so like if you put this within the whole context of what we've been seeing from the DNI with Tulsi Gabbard going down to Fulton,
Yeah.
Georgia, and getting involved in the electrical, but that's a whole different can of worms. I won't go too far, but it's just like it just seems like it's been one thing after another with that whole
Well,
thing.
I've been thinking about that. To me, like t Tulsi Gabbard, to me, is like one of the most dangerous people in the administration. Everybody talks
I
about.
wholeheartedly, as a former, like, can I just like before you go any, like they, I'll make this very, when you go into the CIA and it's like they really hammer it into you, like, truth shall set, it's chiseled into the building. The truth shall set you free.
Right,
And politicization is a dirty word. And like,
right,
and here and where we're at today, whereas like, talk about truth shall set you free. It just feels like, lies are going to enslave us at some point. But I mean,
yeah,
that's where we're at. And it just, to me, as a former analyst in CIA, it's so counter to everything. Not only do
yeah,
you have the highest intelligence official, or at least running the bureaucracy of the IC, involved in domestic politics, but also involved in pushing these false election lines. I'll just leave it at that. It just,
Well,
it's
yeah,
bizarre and it's
my
frightening. And Americans should be concerned about this because the DNI should be focusing on external security threats to America. And if
right,
that sounds like she's more busy dipping
right.
into conspiracy theories and all that kind of, so I'll leave it at that. But
No, no, I mean, like, I think until James, maybe with the exception of James Clapper, I think most Americans couldn't name who the DNI even was
now,
because they're
absolutely
because
not.
they're because they're just doing their job and they're
No.
not,
And that's the way they
they're,
liked it actually,
yeah,
because it's,
exactly. And
yeah,
to
it's,
me, like the reason I think she's so dangerous is I don't think she believes in anything except just the pursuit of power.
I,
Like Stephen Miller has his own weird views of immigration that he's has, and RFK Jr. has health quackery that he's pursuing. Everybody's pursuing something. She's got nothing to pursue except power, and all she wants to do to me is to stay in Trump's good graces. That's it. And
I
so she will do whatever it takes to do that.
100% agree. And then just as a former professional, intelligence professional, just to see this where there's just like, again, the whole ethos of like staying out of politics completely, like politicization was again a dirty word, and like we don't do that. And it was a preservation for a long time where they did succeed at keep, but just this is just it's very damaging. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it
So
is.
anyway. So that's
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So okay, so I'm sure more to come on that, but also want to talk about some of the other things you've written about recently. You wrote a lot about the U.S. operation to capture Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. We're a good month out from that operation. So what are some of the key? I know you wrote a lot about some of the technical capabilities and some of the things that happened. What are some of the standouts for you looking back on that operation?
yeah. It's a little tricky because while that operation was such a violation of all kinds of international norms, and we're just going in and basically, I mean, you could argue kidnapping some other country's president and bringing him back to New York. The way it was pulled off, I thought was astonishing. That um, Russia has sent Venezuela literally billions of dollars worth of munitions and weapons and planes and systems. And some of those systems are advertised as like they're supposed to defend your country from exactly what we did.
Yeah.
And they didn't even get a shot off. Or if they did, it was a shot that
That's
went,
right. You wrote on the SA was it SA 30 300s or the air defense systems of
yeah,
Russia? Yeah, you wrote a piece on that, I think.
yeah,
That's
that
some
that that I think if you look at what happened and you kind of pull it back, like there was some kind of technological wizardry that came in where they used electronic warfare systems and other kind of super highly classified systems to basically not shut down the power, and I think to point the radars away from where the attack was coming. I mean, it was an astonishing display
yeah.
um, of what our capabilities are. And maybe it wouldn't be so successful against a China or somebody like that, but to go in and out really without losing a single plane or a single loss of life, I thought really needed some explanation. And what I think happened, I can't prove this, but Trump has, in his, in his weird way, he can't keep quiet about these things.
Yeah, he goes, I saw it. Go ahead.
And
Yeah.
so he talked about this thing, he called it the discombobulator. And it's a system it's a system that confuses enemy radars and systems and things. And what I think it is, I can't prove this because it's like probably one of the most classified weapons we have. But there's
Hmm.
been some reporting out there that that this has been in development for a long time. And what we have the capability of doing. So a radar, so a defense system is a closed system, right? So you have radars, you have missiles, you have a command and control center, and they aren't operating on like Gmail. That's a closed internet,
Yeah, absolutely.
closed communication system.
Yeah.
Maybe it's radio they have, maybe they have electronic communication, but they're not, you can't hack, you can't like be in, New York and hack into that system.
Yeah.
Flying a plane over it, there are antenna that they use to communicate with each other, like through radio or through whatever signal they're using. And we have the capability now to push in some kind of algorithmic, I don't know what it is, some kind of algorithmic signal into their antennas that will literally hack it and allow us to control it. And that allows us to take the radars and point them away or point them in a different direction, to turn things off, to make it look like things that are appearing are not appearing. And,
Yeah.
it is like, it sounds like science fiction to me, but that's what happened. And
And it just opened a wide open path for us to go in and do it. The operation basically to go in there.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We cleared a pathway. They talked about that in the briefing. Like we cleared a pathway.
That kind
And
of beg to me, that kind of begs the question, is it really worth exposing and using all these advanced capabilities for the first time to take out Nicolas Maduro? Maybe you want to have those on your back pocket for a real serious, I don't know. That's a judgment call that,
no, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, that's a very valid point. I mean, these systems are used by, Iran, where we have a bigger beef than we do with Venezuela. These are Chinese and Russian radar systems, and so you're alerting, both of those countries, hey, you have a vulnerability here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I mean, it was an astonishing display, but yeah, did we kind of blow it all on getting Maduro when it, might have been better used for something else? Yeah, I mean that's a great question.
But having said that, they didn't lose one single U.S.
Right,
service person in that raid, right?
right, right,
Yeah, it's pretty
right,
incredible.
right. And
Um,
they killed about 60 people or something like that. A lot of Cuban guards were guarding Maduro. That was kind of, that's kind of this dirty secret of Venezuela. I talked to intelligence people, and you probably know this too, that Cuba really stands behind Venezuela. Like Venezuela doesn't have a very good intelligence system, but Cuba does. And
mm,
Cuba was really kind of propping up that security service there. And so,
yeah. And they
um,
were benefiting immensely from Venezuelan
oil.
oil.
Yeah.
I thought I read something maybe in the last couple of days that they're saying that their commercial airline, Cuba, are going to have to be shut down their commercial. They're running out of oil for anything, like even their airline industry and things of that nature. So I
Yeah.
don't know. This is
I
all
mean,
after.
the flip side of the Maduro thing, just from like, I mean, to play this out, like, you know, Maduro had given a foothold. I mean, Hezbollah had a presence in there's a Lebanese community in Venezuela, and Hezbollah had developed a kind of a foothold there.
Hmm.
Russia obviously was,
Yeah.
using it to thumb its nose at us. Um, and so I don't know if it's hard to tell whether there's really any strategic thinking going on in this White House, but I mean, there is some strategic value in like kicking Iran out of your hemisphere and kicking Russia out as well.
Sure.
But is that why we did it? I have no idea. I just don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, people, and I haven't focused that closely on it, but you see so many just kind of like different takes on like, and most of the time it's like, why exactly did we, trying to figure out why does Venezuela become our mortal enemy in
Yeah,
our hemisphere? And it
yeah,
goes back to the second, I know this much, it goes back to the second or the first Trump administration. They had run-ins with, they were gunning, they had all those elections and everything that went, yeah. So there's a long history there, but
I think,
anyhow.
I don't know. My take on it is that Trump believes the last person he talks to, and I think he talks to a lot of people who are like oil guys and want to get back in and make money in Venezuela. I think that determines a lot of our foreign policy is these kind of
Yeah.
business deals. Um, so I don't know if there's like and then people fill in all the strategic gaps with, in Washington. But yeah,
I don't that's how he thinks, I think. Yeah, I would have to agree with that. That's kind of how he sees the world. It's all about, it's zero sum and it's
right,
like confiscating re natural
right.
resources and all. I mean, like, he's got that quote of when we went into he was against the Iraq war, but he said, God, or something, damn it, we should have at least taken all the
Take the
oil. And
oil.
said the
Yeah.
same thing in Syria. And it's just
Yeah.
like, no, no, that's not what we're really
Yeah.
trying to
And then
accomplish here.
what we're doing in Greenland that now is also equally even more crazy,
Oh,
you know. So,
I wrote a lot about, yeah, I really, because the Greenland thing really, like, it really got to me because, of course, NATO ally,
right.
just the US behaving like such an aggressor state and all that. And that was interesting how that followed directly on the heels of the Venezuela operation. You had individuals, not just Trump, but it seemed like people within his administration who were kind of goading him to just, let's just do it. We got the momentum and let's just, yeah, that was fascinating to me, but in the end they backed down. So for now,
Yeah, for now. But
yeah,
and that's crazy because we used to have, military bases all over Greenland
that's the
during the Cold War.
argument. You don't have to take all the arguments are specious. They don't make any sense. It makes
Yeah.
zero sense. And
It make,
when you get into real like hard-boiled kind of like alliance politics and like it makes absolutely no sense.
yeah.
Even on a like a kind of just like a moral ground, it's just crazy. To me anyway. So
Yeah, I think that really was like a breaking point for Europe, that
absolutely.
I don't know if
He
you
went
saw
over
there.
there to Davos and got nothing. He
Yeah.
backtracked, but really what he accomplished was completely losing the Europeans. And the Europeans walked away from that and just said, we got to go our own way. I really
Yeah.
truly think no matter what they're making nice on NATO and they'll always kind of hold on to that. I mean, I think deep down inside, they're just like, we can't trust the United States anymore. It's just they're all over the map and we can't trust them. When the United States starts talking about, you know, seizing our own sovereign territory, that's it. So
Totally. And I don't think people appreciate, like, we've provided this nuclear umbrella for Europe. That's part of the deal here, right? Is that, that not everybody, these countries aren't all going nuclear because we provide that sort of guarantee.
yeah.
And now I think you're gonna start seeing countries like, well, I guess we need a nuclear weapon, or we got to use Britain's nuclear umbrella, or France's, and I think I mean, it's really going to be hard to put that genie back in the bottle.
100%. It's gonna have serious long-term ramifications. I mean, you already have Canada and Britain making overtures to China, and like
Yeah.
it's none of
Yeah.
this was necessary. But anyway, well, that's another one. But okay, how about we talk about Epstein for a few minutes?
Sure.
We can do this quick. But I mean, I wanted to ask you about this because you wrote on it, and it seems its latest tranche of Epstein files. It came from Justice Department. It really the one thing I saw, and you wrote on it a little bit, was this kind of like supposed nexus between, or just evidence that there might be this greater nexus between Jeffrey Epstein and potentially Russian intelligence. That some people, I think that's taken it a couple steps further along than where we're at today. But they did have
Yeah.
this. There's been a lot of talk about this former aide of Epstein, Masha Busher, who was really
Yeah.
close. She was a Putin youth or whatever they call it. She was in one of these nationalistic organizations. She got a medal from Putin, and then lo and behold, she was this. She what was she?
Venture capitalist
Or she was
also.
a venture capitalist, but also she was a publicist for a period of time for Jeffrey
Yes.
Epstein.
Yes.
And so this has kind of stirred up all this discussion and debate. Like, could there be this Russian intelligence, connection between Epstein and like some of his, acquaintances and contacts? What's your take of all this? Seems like there's a lot of swirl, but yeah, I don't know if we're really there yet to where we can say that Russian intelligence really penetrated the Epstein circle, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think Epstein, I mean, he was a con man, right? He was also a serial abuser of women and girls. Had both, and he was also at the same time a collector and connector of the most influential people in the world.
Right.
It's a really weird mix. Um, but I think he collected people. So, he did have a lot of Russian connections. I think the reason why is because Russia doesn't really give a shit if you have sexual issues in your past, because you know, there's no Me Too movement in Russia. They blame the women, for when there's like a sexual harassment scenario.
Yeah.
It's not a good place for women to, for women's rights or women's safety. Um, so I think he had more than a fair share of Russians, but he had people in the UAE. He had, the former Israeli, prime minister, minister of defense on his constant, dinner invitations and constant invites. He had Peter Mandelson in Britain. I mean, so he could have been an agent of any of those countries, but he just collected people and he put them
Yeah.
together, and that gave him this aura of power and influence. Um, I don't think he was an intelligence agent. I think he was running his own sort of intelligence agency, just collecting gossip and information on people, and some of it very, very, very sensitive information, like
Yeah.
Peter Mandelson sending him internal British, deliberations during the financial crisis, which could have been extremely valuable, right, for an investor.
Right.
Um, so, but, you know, I think, what I wonder is if the intelligence agencies saw his value, like they were they wanted to keep tabs on him because the guy's a gold mine. He's got,
Yeah.
he's you could blackmail anybody in his orbit. Look what's happening now. 6 ways till Sunday. So I wonder if there were these kind of outreaches, people keeping tabs on him. I don't know if that's true, but I don't think it went the other way. I don't think he was their agent. I think they may have been kind of interested in him.
Yeah. The one thing I don't understand, oh yeah, just this kind of an aside, but when it comes to the Epstein files, Department of Justice has control of these, correct? They're the ones who are so like how can we really trust we know how thoroughly politicized the Justice Department has become. How can we really trust that they're not just selectively releasing certain things and holding back other? I mean, I don't understand. There's no real transparency there, right?
No, and yeah, and I think there are some like 3 million pages we haven't seen. So I think
Yeah,
we're really just kind of at the beginning of this process, really, in a way.
yeah,
But like if you look at the redactions, and people have pointed this out online really well. The reason, like, there have just been these weird things. Like someone will say, "I don't think so," or "I don't feel like I can do that," and the word "don't" will be redacted. Well, why are you redacting "don't"? Because I don't know, it's Don T, right? So
oh,
I think they were using AI or some kind of system to redact all these things, and keep certain names out. And
yeah, that's
um,
interesting.
yeah, and also, I haven't really looked at this very closely, but Bloomberg's done some reporting on this, that some of the documents, when the FBI got them, they were already redacted. Like they've been redacted before the review.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know what's going on, but look, it's all going to come out eventually. If there's a Democrat gets elected, the gates will open here. But I think that there's enough. I mean, there's enough bipartisan anger over this that it's just not going to go away. And um, I think we're just really at the beginning.
Wow. Yeah, it is interesting. It does cut both ways, and there's all kinds of people out there, different political stripes that
Yeah.
it's amazing to me because I couldn't keep up with it. I'm just like I can't keep up with this story. It's too much and but it
It's a
just
lot.
it just it's the story that never dies. It's never going to go away. So it's probably going to be with us for the entire second Trump administration. So
Well, I mean, the Republicans are kind of reaping what they're sowing. They kind of endorsed or pushed along this whole QAnon movement, which
that's
was,
true.
all about
Yeah.
Democrats eating whatever pedophile child sacrifice. I don't know what it was. But they endorsed it, or at least they let it. They saw it as advantageous to them. And now those, I mean, some of those things are crazy. But the idea that there's like a global elites protecting
Yeah.
each other,
Right.
that is true.
That's very compelling. When you look at it, you're like, the when you that article you wrote about these like just really high end, like almost like these high end brothels or something, where just like the ultra rich go. It's just like, yeah, when you
Yeah.
read this
So
kind of stuff, you're just like, it
yeah. So
really
that
does kind of like make people think and pause. And it feeds into the worst stereotypes of this global elite that are just way above the law and abusing kind of like the normal laws that regular people have to live by and
yeah.
involved in really, really bad, like, human trafficking and all these kinds of things, which anyway, It's
Well, I mean, that's Jeffrey Epstein's whole appeal to these people, right? He was their kind of like their bad guy friend, right? Like the rules of society did not apply to him. Like he could have, if he wanted underage girls, he would have underage girls. If he wanted to steal, he would steal. If he whatever he wanted to do, he would do and just get away with it over
get
and over
away
again.
with it.
He was a
Yeah.
master at just getting away with things. Um, I don't know if there's something I think about a lot with this, and stop me if we're going on too long with
No,
Epstein.
whatever. Yeah, it's fine.
But Brad Edwards, he's the attorney representing a lot of the women who are suing Epstein.
Hmm.
Uh, and he like, I mean, he was fighting Epstein kind of alone. He was when after the before the Miami Herald, after the Palm Beach prosecution, he was filing lawsuits against Epstein, and Epstein was just bringing, they he was suing Brad Edwards. Epstein was. Alan Dershowitz was suing Brad Edwards. Other people. I mean, they were trying to like just destroy this guy,
Mm.
literally trying to destroy him. And he kept going. And at the end of his book, like he has this interesting chapter where he talks about his own relationship with Epstein. Like he met several times with Epstein, and they kind of developed a relationship. And what he realized was that he had wanted to please Epstein. And what he came to understand was Epstein had manipulated him.
Mm.
And how he did that was he was like a master manipulator. So Brad Edwards, they were having a conversation, and he said, something like, "Well, that wouldn't be fair. That's not fair." And Epstein stops and says, "Well, what does fairness mean to you?" And he realized that for Edwards, this lawyer, being fair was like a core value of his. He's a lawyer. He wants to be fair and play,
Yeah.
do things fairly. And so Epstein starts weaving that into the conversation. Well, that wouldn't be fair to you, Brad. I'm trying to be fair to you. You're not understanding. I'm trying to be nice to you. I'm trying to be fair. And that's the start. That's like the level of manipulation that Epstein
Manipulation.
was pulling on here.
Yeah.
Um, and I highly recommend it for everybody. Like it's just like, this lawyer who Epstein was trying to destroy realizes that he's been manipulated by the man who's trying to destroy him. Um,
Yeah. And that's what these people are, right? The people are they're master manipulators. They
yeah,
can, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so crazy. So TBD, right? On this whole thing, we're gonna be living this for a while. Like, are
I
you gonna
think
be
so.
writing on this more or
You know, I'm going to try to stay away because it is just such a minefield.
I know.
And,
It's so complex. And then the other thing is, oh no, I won't. Just
can I
quickly,
just tell
like,
you?
there's so many people involved in this thing, but to me, it's like, okay, well, if they just happen to be at a party where Jeffrey Epstein was, that's one thing. But like,
Well, can I tell you the story that I wound up writing? What blew me, I was writing about Masha Busher, this woman we were talking about,
mm-hmm,
and her name comes up in this FBI memo that was used to vet a guy named Tim Draper. And Tim Draper is like a billionaire. He's one of the wealthiest people in the country. He's like a Silicon Valley investor. He started this company called DFJ, which invested in, I don't know, SpaceX and Uber and all these things.
yeah,
And he's extremely powerful and influential. And this FBI memo accuses him and his friends of running this blackmail ring through a sex club.
yeah, I saw the
And
art.
and then he wrote me and he's like, this, like someone is trying to get me. And I'm like, this dude, like, I mean, the tentacles of this thing go to the most powerful people in this country. And you have to be very, very careful going into this thing. A lot of rocks are going to get uncovered here. And, they're not all right, but some of them are
Yeah.
real. And, you have to be very, very careful where you kind of go with this story, I
I
think.
can imagine it. It would be turn into like it could turn into your life's work very easily.
Yeah, you can get sued. I mean, yeah,
You could see
100%.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're gonna get away from Epstein now, but let's see. I had a few more quick questions for. I don't. We're running short. I don't know. I've got an hour, I
I'm
think.
good on time, so whatever you
Okay.
want.
Okay. I just don't know if this thing's gonna shut me off or not. I don't think it will, but I wanted to ask you really quick about the strikes in the Caribbean,
Yeah.
in the Pacific. You've written on this one as well. As everyone knows, we had another strike on Monday, I think.
Yeah. And someone survived, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a survivor, I believe, another boat hit, but the standard kind of criticism of this all along is like the military's hitting civilians, they're hitting people in the high seas, they're that cannot surrender, or there's incidents where they have surrenders. They even used an unmarked aircraft on one point. So most of what I read, kind of mainstream media, and like I think I read a New York Times analysis recently. They kind of said most of the analysts and lawyers or people they'd spoken with said this is highly problematic and verges on war crimes, that kind of
It is
thing.
a,
That's
yeah, it's a war crime. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, you kind of answered my question. What's your take on all this? Like, yeah,
Oh, I mean, there's a seal there. I talked to a lot of SEALs, and one of them, like some of these guys are to the right of Genghis Khan. Like they're,
yeah.
way on the right, and they're like, this is way out of line. And we are, yeah, these are people for years we treated as civilians. We would stop them on the high seas and arrest them, take them off the boat, and maybe would sink the boat or burn the drugs or whatever. But to just kill the people in the boat, who are basically civilians, and we've branded them as
Yeah.
narco terrorists. But you can do that to anybody. You can, to me, it's like, yeah, we've gone. To me, that is a clear crime, in my
Clear
view.
cut, no ambiguity
Yeah, there's no
whatsoever.
ambiguity there. And you can look at how they're handling it. They release on social media, and they were very excited about it for a while. With Pete Hegseth,
Yeah. Because this
glorifying.
administration, they live and die by the sexy videos and all that. It's
Yeah, and
all kind of, yeah,
I think
it's the,
I think it's a content generation thing.
it
Like,
is.
you
I
know,
honestly believe that. I mean, when you look at not only just the military operations, but everything, it's all designed for public consumption and it's
yeah.
media and regardless of the substance of what's going on, which is really frightening if you think about it or
Yeah.
concerning. Anyway,
Well,
go ahead.
one of the things I got into a lot of issues on this, but one of them was the first strike. They had blown up a boat that had 11 people on it. There were two survivors. The boat, I guess the boat overturned. It was like a fishing boat, and it
Hmm.
overturned. And they're, waving, not, well, how they wave becomes important, but they're waving
Hmm.
at a passing overcraft overhead. It turns out we found out later is a civilian aircraft that had probably a launch tube that could allow it to fire munitions.
Hmm.
Why they chose that aircraft when they had a massive buildup going on, I don't know, but that's what they
Yeah.
did. And so these guys are, for minutes and minutes, this JSOC commander is trying to figure out what to do with these guys. And eventually he decides on his own to destroy them. And the reason why is because Hegseth's orders were to eliminate all the targets on the boat. They were all designated as narco terrorists. After the boat strike, they're still designated as narco terrorists, and he follows those orders. Um, it wasn't a kill them all. This gets really dicey in
Yeah, because there was some kind of different takes on what
right,
was said, right?
right. The Washington Post said it was like a kill them all order, and a kill them all order is a war crime. Like you can't say go kill everybody in that village, because
Yeah,
if they surrender, that they are protected
yeah,
under the rules of
they're
war.
protected, right?
Right. And that's what these guys were doing. They were surrendered. Well, I think they were surrendering. They're not a threat. They're sitting there on this boat and they're waving at this aircraft overhead. And what JSOC says is like, well, they didn't do this two-armed wave. And that's its official, but how do you surrender to a civilian aircraft? The whole thing is crazy. But the real tell
Yeah.
here is they released the video of the first strike where they blow up the boat, but they didn't release the video of the second strike where they're killing two people. Since
Oh, they didn't want that one to be shown.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, um, people say, well, these aren't fishermen, that these are terrorists. And there was a guy here it turned out he was here in San Diego. He was one of the only, there are only two known survivors of these strikes.
Hmm.
And one of them was prosecuted here in San Diego. He was an Ecuadorian fisherman who was paid $6,000 to run drugs. This is before the current, this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. He was running drugs up to Mexico and he got caught and was prosecuted here and he went to prison. And I talked to his defense lawyer, and he's like this guy is yes, he's working for the cartels, but he's making $6,000, that which is to him a huge amount of money. But this is a fisherman, this is a guy who is desperate for money. And to say that this is a narco terrorist, I think is disingenuous. He's running drugs. Yes, he knows he's doing something illegal, but he's a civilian. This is a civilian. He's not shooting, he's not firing, there's no weapon. Um, and that's the other thing that they've done is they've declared that narcotics are a weapon. And so that's the reason for striking these boats is narcotics are now a
Yeah,
battlefield threat that can be eliminated,
yeah, yeah.
and that's where we are, and so to me it's insanity. And uh, it's it's
Not
a
only that, just when you were speaking, I just, thinking through, like, you can either just kill someone in the high seas, or if you go about it the normal way would to be to I don't know if the Coast Guard would be used that far out in certain operations, but
yeah, they would.
um, yeah, they would. Okay. So, but like to board and do the typical Coast Guard raid or arrest, and then you
Right,
have individuals who you can interrogate and glean intel from
right,
instead of just dead bodies at the bottom of
right,
the ocean. Yeah.
right.
So it just seems to me the whole
Yeah,
thing is cockamamie. It's like it's
who
much
paid
more
the
better
yeah,
approach through a law enforcement and intelligence. There's all kinds of federal agencies that could, but to apply a military paradigm to this is just yeah,
it's
yeah,
crazy.
that's
Yeah, the fisherman was paid $6,000. Well, who paid him $6,000 is a
right.
better
You get a
question
ton of
than
intel from that
yeah,
guy. But
right. Yeah,
anyway, um,
yeah,
okay, well,
great
more to
point.
come on that. I really wanted to ask you about your podcast as well because I went through some of them and I thought they were
Yeah,
very, very interesting. I could tell that you've done a lot of work in this area. Um, they basically cover several cases where the reality of well-known, not only SEAL, you cover a lot of SEAL
mhm.
operations, but you cover the gamut, right? The Special Operations Forces. Is that
Mostly
right?
SEAL stuff. Mostly
Mostly
SEAL
SEAL
stuff, though.
stuff.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so it's a lot of SEAL stuff. And you cover a lot of these operations. A lot of them occurred in Afghanistan during the War on Terror,
yep,
different locations where kind of the myth of the operation doesn't live up to the reality. And the one podcast I watched, and then there's several of them, was the one on the lone survivor and the whole controversy there.
yeah.
Basically, like and I was heartbroken because I saw the movie, love that movie,
A
but
lot of
like if
people
you
did.
watch your podcast, you're just like, wow, this is the reality of what happened on the ground, according to the witnesses that you spoke to, is really nowhere near what really happened. What was it in 2007 or whenever that went
Six,
down?
yeah, or five actually. Yeah,
Was it five?
yeah,
Okay. So maybe I thought you could talk about some of that because I think I wanted to flag that because I think people, if anyone out there wants to see some really interesting examples of where stories can be embellished and things can really, really get, and it really incenses me also, I should say, when just generally speaking, I hate it when Hollywood, there's the book, that's another issue, but I hate it when Hollywood purports to tell more or less a true story, and then you find out later that it's just all BS and it was all jazzed up and all that kind of stuff. That really gets to me because I think it's like being disingenuous and it's kind of just like
yeah,
spreading false information in a way. So anyway, with that, why don't you talk about some of those? 'Cause I think they're really interesting.
yeah. So, the one that I focused on a lot is Lone Survivor.
Hmm.
But what I'm really focused on is a pattern that I think the Navy SEALs engaged in. It's no secret now the Navy SEALs have become like a brand, right? That there are
Yeah.
a million podcasters out there.
Yep.
There are books, there's movies, that they're kind of unique in that area. Like Delta Force, they have some things, but it's not the same. Air Force Special Operations, I mean, nobody even knows who they are. Marine
Yeah.
Special Operations, I don't think people even know they're Marine Special Operations, because those
Yeah.
guys are serious, for the most part, professionals, and
The other one was what was it? Green Berets, which they're very low key and they do
yeah,
amazing things, but they don't get the rock star kind of
yeah,
aura they just have a different approach. They go in, yeah. So that's another example where I was
exactly,
like, well, yeah. Anyway,
exactly. Or the Army Rangers,
all that. Yeah.
yeah. but the SEALs have they have become like this brand. And what the pattern of lone survivor is, and I think your audience probably knows the story of this four SEALs who go into the mountains of Afghanistan on this mission. They're discovered and then chased by Afghan gunmen, and there's only one guy survives, and that's the story. And he's rescued by eventually by American forces after several days. Well, the story, yeah, was nowhere near what really happened. It was a grand embellishment of a fiasco. It was
Mm.
that mission was a disaster. And
And it goes to higher levels too, right? Of
yeah,
planning and
I
execution and
mean, at the time it was the greatest loss, or was it? Yeah, I mean, I think I mean that was the special operations hadn't lost that many people.
with a helicopter crash and everything that
Right,
occurred,
because I was
right?
gonna, yeah, because there was a rescue attempt made. I can't remember the number now, but it wound up being like 15 dead. I mean, it was a lot of people died in that. And that was the greatest loss of life for naval special warfare since like World War II.
Wow.
So what should have happened is there should have been investigations and heads should have rolled and there should have been, accountability. That's not what happened. What happened was they produced a book, and the book was produced by Marcus Luttrell, the surviving SEAL, while he was still on active duty. They
But
like,
what I thought I read in one of your, or maybe in the podcast, that the idea to publicize this came from even a higher up in the command or something. Did I get that
yeah.
wrong?
No, I mean that's
Or maybe they
that's
were just putting a good spin on it and they wanted, yeah, that was part
it's
of the
all
whole.
very murky, like how all of a sudden this Navy SEAL gets an agent in LA who represents like all these Hollywood celebrities. How does that happen?
Yeah.
And he gets a big book deal and he gets millions of dollars, and it's done through the command. I mean, this would not have happened the command, unless the command had
Right.
okayed
They
it.
blessed it. They blessed it for
At the
sure.
very
Yeah.
least, they blessed it
Yeah.
and if or they engineered the whole thing.
Right.
Um, and I think they did. I think they did engineer it because they were trying to turn a fiasco into a story of heroism that has become, like, as you said, a beloved story now, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the problem is that, and this is the problem is like this is a repeating pattern in the Navy SEALs.
Mm.
It starts with in Afghanistan in the early days of the war. There was another mission that went horribly wrong. And again, more rescue attempts, and a bunch of people are killed, Army Rangers, and a bunch of Navy SEALs, and an Air Force special operator, an Air Force JTAC, controller, the guy who calls in airstrikes. Um, and it also, there's a movie being made about this right now, and it's extremely
Yeah.
controversial in the SEAL community because the story that the SEALs don't want to be told is that they left this Air Force combat controller on the mountain and he was still alive. And
Mm.
that goes against all the ethos of SEALs that you don't leave anybody behind. And it's like the truth that they can't accept.
Yeah.
Even though it's this Air Force guy is a Medal of Honor, even though like it's been confirmed in a million different investigations, they're still pushing back against this narrative today, 20 years later,
Mm.
more than 20
Mm.
years
Wow.
later. And that was the first pattern of this. And another great SEAL story is American Sniper, which was
Another movie I
Chris
saw.
Kyle,
Yeah.
who became the deadliest sniper in American history, right? When he shot
Yeah.
how many hundreds of people. Yeah, that dude was shooting civilians. He was shooting children, men, women. That's been pretty well documented
That's
now.
documented. Wow.
And
That's not in the movie either.
no, exactly. And it's all like these movies are taking the worst things that the SEALs have done and making them into stories of heroism. Uh,
Yeah.
Not the worst things they've done, but the worst things that have happened to them,
Yeah.
and making them into stories of heroism.
And that's not unusual. I mean, just from my own military experience, it's not unusual. And I mean, you see it in so many different guises, but there is a tendency, just like for, I mean, obviously Hollywood, there are some books that are very honest, but you just see, I've seen examples of, um, Marine Corps actions where just like certain things about war and just the really unsavory parts are kind of like left to the side. And it tends, when people want to write a story, they tend toward the more heroic, glorious. I mean, even in this day, you'd think we would have evolved past this a little bit, but I've just seen my own personal examples of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I don't think it's unique to the SEALs, but they've made it into kind of a cottage industry now. And the latest thing now is the Bin Laden raid, which is their greatest mission, right?
I saw some of your work on that too. Yeah.
Their most their greatest success um, is now being tarnished by one of their own who's come out and said that there were never any photos released of bin Laden. He was shot in the head, um, and how he was shot in the head is now up up for question. Either he was shot in the head as they kind of walked into the room and things were happening very quickly. Now Robert O'Neill, the guy who says he shot bin Laden, said as bin Laden was dead on the floor, and SEAL walked over and pointed his rifle at bin Laden's head and pulled the trigger. So which is another war crime. And so uh, again, like their greatest missions are always like have this shadow cast over them, you know.
Yeah. And again, there's, I was just like, not to belabor the point, but I mean, when the team killed Bin Laden, I'm sure everyone like in Washington and like throughout the country just they want to immediately even though they didn't know who they were initially, but eulogize. I mean,
Yes.
that's the instinct to just like, oh, aren't these guys amazing? And they're just superhuman and all this stuff. And it isn't, yeah, it is it's interesting to me how it takes time for some of these more unsavory details to work their way out. So it's
Yeah.
interesting stuff. I would just again want to encourage anyone who's watching this or listening to check out Seth's podcast because they really are. If you're interested in the history of any of this stuff, it's you'll very quickly just start watching one and just like, wow, there's very interesting stories involved
Thank
in
you.
these
Well,
podcasts. Yeah,
I'm not a natural podcaster. Like I'm a writer. I'm a dinosaur. I'm a writer. But the guys I was talking to, they said you've got to do this as a podcast because nobody, I can write the greatest story in the world and
I know.
few people read it, but podcasts, like you want to reach the military audience, you got to go through podcasts.
Yeah,
And it's kind of turned out to be true. I've gotten other stories out of the podcast with military people watching it and then kind of saying, yes, this is the story. You're right, or you're wrong, and here's why. And so that's led to additional podcasts, and it's true. Like that's how the world is now. Like you want to reach that military audience, it's through the podcast.
yeah. And I know I kind of learned like just my kind of I don't know, cursory working with these guys, like just like, but they have some backstories and there's all kinds of interesting things. And then the community just lives on. Like there's the guys who are the veterans who are, a lot of them still live in the area in like San Diego and that
Yeah,
it, it
Coronado. Yeah.
really, it really is a tight-knit community.
Yes.
So it's got to be an interesting beat, I guess.
It is. But there's like a tension inside the community that the people who would shoot bin Laden in the head, right? Versus the people who are, I think most of the SEALs are kind of good, solid guys, rule followers. Maybe somewhere in the middle, and but there's a small group that are kind of like pirates almost that have it comes out of SEAL Team 6 that they were carrying hatchets into battle and this shooting in the head thing, it's called canoeing. Like they would, as a signature, like they would split your head open like a canoe. Um, and that was kind of like their a signature they had. Uh,
Okay.
and they would photograph it and trade photos, I guess. I don't know. But like there's
I
this kind of
that practice when I saw that almost like baseball card type stuff, like trading kill shots and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, so there's this kind of element in the SEAL community that that has caused a lot of like problems. And so there's kind of this is kind of what I got started on was like there's this tension inside the community between these two kind of this push and pull here. And there are some who want a clean house, and some who are happy making money off of their fame and fortune. And that's kind of why this is just such a fertile area because it just keeps going.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I guess has it changed now that the since the wars have kind of, the wars in the Middle East have just wound down, and I mean, is it different, kind of a
I
different
think it's
feel?
that's hard to say. I think it's gotten better. I think there's been some efforts to clean house. Um, and I think a lot of the people have been pushed out or moved on. But the, the people out there, the public face of the SEAL community, the Rob O'Neills and the Jocko Willinks and the Marcus Luttrells, almost everybody was there's so many podcasts. A lot of those people are like have a dark past, and
Mm,
um, it's I don't think it's a coincidence. They're getting out in front and the SEAL community's allowed them to be their voice, right?
mm,
They could take back that narrative anytime they wanted. The admiral could come out and say, "This is not who we are. Here are the guys we want." We have our own podcast. Let's launch our own podcast and have like the CIA has a podcast now, right? Where they talk anonymously or whatever.
I don't know.
And
I haven't seen it
oh
actually.
yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Well,
And
they're not saying much if they're talking. They never say much in their public affairs
no, they had
statements. Or
like the director of operations on. I mean, they have they were really trying to tell their story, which
yeah,
is smart, right? Instead of like
right.
having like crazy conspiracy theorists tell your story,
That's true. I mean, you have
have
one
like
choice. You can sit back and let that be the narrative,
right,
or try and,
right,
yeah.
right. And the SEALs could do the same, but they're not. So, that's kind of things are just everything that'll just keep going until somebody makes it stop, I guess.
Well, sounds like it's is interesting beat, and you've
Yeah.
got plenty of material there. I mean, we've covered a lot. I think we've covered a lot of the things I wanted to ask. I just want to ask you, you know, in your time, I mean, you've kind of touched on this in your time. How long have you been doing this, by the way? Is like you said, since 2001, all
Well, I started reporting in like the mid 90s.
the mid 90s.
Yeah, I was like
Okay.
a cop reporter at a newspaper, but doing the national security stuff, like yeah, like off and on for 20 years, so something like that.
Okay. That's a stretch.
Yeah.
So having come through, and coming through the war on terrors and the war on terror, and then now we're where we're at in the country today. It's just it's an entirely, as far as I'm concerned, because I worked the war on terror my whole career, and when I retired, I just felt like, the world is changing so much, and so even in the United States. But what is your take on the changes you've seen over the last 20 years
Oh,
in
that's a great question. Um, well, and I mean, this is really a question for you too, is like, you know, um, people think like you write about the military, like they're all going to be, rah rah Republican, pro government. But I think the war on terror was so corrosive for like public trust in the military and faith in
hmm
government. And I think we're still dealing with the consequences of that. And um, a lot of veterans, feel betrayed and
mm.
they were lied to. I mean,
Yeah.
um, I don't know how you feel about that, but I mean that's pretty
I, I
clear.
I can say, and I'm a little bit unique because I went from my time in the Marine Corps to going to the CIA, where I was working actively on the war. I was probably one of the last guys in the world to say like that the Iraq War was. I like. I, I guess you could say it was an exercise of just like being very defensive and like constructing an argument. And then that argument, just over time, I just had to be honest with myself. Is just like this was like, kind of a mistake. You can go through all the reasons why the war occurred. But I just think all veterans who fought in the war on terror have to go through this, especially if you lost comrades or friends or
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
civilians killed. You just have to like go through this long, kind of arduous mental journey of like, why did this happen? And you're
yeah,
constantly going through it in your mind, and just trying to, you have to come to terms with it, I guess. It's
yeah,
a process. So,
yeah. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, like something I think about a lot is whether Donald Trump would have been elected if we had not gone to war in Iraq. Like I want like faith in like our under faith in government. I mean, there's a lot of factors, right? Social media, a lot of things, but faith in government was so corroded by the Iraq War, and that some guy comes in and says it's all a lie and is lying all the time. Is seen as a force for change in some weird way. I don't know. I don't know how to put all those thoughts
I
together, but
I think it was a major factor. I think there were other factors, but I do think that was a major factor. And I think a lot about how the veteran kind of movement coming out of the wars on terror. So first of all, I think some things have changed in our society. So like I'm all for giving veterans like kind of like a special status and honoring their service, but it
yeah,
things seems like the war on terror, like over time, kind of like I feel like it that kind of went a little bit too far. I think about uh, the generation. I had a grandfather who fought in World War II, and he basically fought all through Europe, through Italy, and he came home and raised a family and drove a school bus, and they didn't expect to be treated, any different than any other American
right,
citizen. They were proud of what they did, but I think the culture is a little bit different today in that I think the veteran, not all of them, because it's not a monolith,
right.
veterans, but I do think it had this, they did channel some of their energy into some of this conservative movement, like the Tea Party and all of these things that
Yeah,
kind of like led into the Trump kind
yeah,
of MAGA, kind of like where we're at today. That was one factor. It wasn't everything, but I
right.
do think the veteran, the whole war on terror and everything that occurred following 9/11 did really shape our politics and
Yeah. Yeah,
led
the
to where we
Whole
are
America First movement of
all
yeah,
that. Like it
yeah,
just seemed like, well, there was a time like I kind of came out of the Marine Corps, I was very proud and everything, but I just noticed this strain of veteran that was very vocal and very like kind of like I don't want to be too negative here, but just like, it almost seemed like it was a almost like a special class that was created and a lot of it bled into the nationalism and all of these things. So like
yeah,
that's when I started to see it and I was like kind of like, wait, what's going on here?
yeah,
Yeah. So anyway,
yeah.
that's my take.
Yeah, there was a list. I can't remember who, like some think tank did of like the worst foreign policy decisions in U.S. history, and the Iraq War is number one. It's hard to argue with that.
I defended it for years. It's hard because again, this gets into like when you, I
Yeah,
mean, I just said, hey, like I had all kinds of elaborate arguments, like, well, Saddam Hussein, like, how come everyone blames George W. Bush and no one blames Saddam Hussein and this and that, and I do think I will say this, everything is more complicated when you start to look under the hood. I know this is
sure.
an intelligence analyst, than the kind of like the public the narrative that you see, the everyday kind of explanation. So like,
Yeah,
for example, there was a lot of factors that led us. There was a long history where America was in a kind of a slow boil conflict with Iraq following
that's
the
true.
Persian Gulf War.
The
That doesn't
no-fly
mean,
zone, and yeah,
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 all that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean we had to go to
yeah,
war with them after 9/11, but there were a
right.
lot of factors involved in that. But again, it's hard looking back to justify, especially when the war was framed in terms of like when they didn't find any WMD, then they kind of shifted the whole rationale for the war to like nation
Yeah,
building and we're gonna spread democracy throughout the Middle East. That's where yeah, just didn't pan out the way they promised. And that's when you get a lot of people who are bitter and upset.
yeah,
So
yeah. And I think we're paying a price for that in a lot of
yeah,
ways.
agree,
Yeah.
agree. Um, So yeah, that's like story of my life, and I'm
No,
still
it's interesting. I mean, because you were there you had an inside seat, right? You were at the military end and the intelligence end, and both of those communities had a lot invested in. A lot of people died, a lot of people were wounded, a lot of people, suffered, and because of those decisions, and it's hard to say that that was, a mistake or yeah, I mean, I get
it's
it.
really hard. It's really hard, especially when you've lost friends or
Yeah,
you just like what the hell? Like that's when you really have you can't really avoid those questions anymore, especially with time. The time that has a
yeah,
way of wearing down all
yeah,
your Yeah, and then you just I do think veterans have they're constantly doing this soul searching and then I think you just kind of comes full circle and just
Yeah.
realize, well, wars happen and I don't know. It's a long, complicated.
I remember I was thinking about this the other day that, when early days of the Iraq War, a lot of the guys were from Camp Pendleton, as you said, and
That was
so
me.
there's some casualties, right? And so I was the military reporter here in San Diego, and I would call up the parents, and this one really stuck with me was this older. It was like sounded like it seemed like it was an older couple, and their young son had been killed, a Marine, a
Mm,
private or something,
hmm
they were saying they were saying, what made his they were telling me, I remember, what made his death worthwhile was, I don't know if you remember this photo, but when the Iraqis voted and they had the ink on their
Oh
hand,
yeah, of course.
was,
Especially being see like when they had that was a real triumphant moment for us. Like,
right. And they were
yeah,
like, that made it all worthwhile. And
worthwhile.
I think not worthwhile. That's the wrong, I'm sorry. They didn't say that meant his death had some meaning, right?
Right.
It wasn't just a total waste. And and I think about that a lot. I think about that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think also, like, I mean, not to belabor this too much, but the way that, Iraq's still more or less nominally, it's very corrupt, but it's still kind of there, kind of chugging along. But the Afghanistan thing, how we
What a
that I
disaster.
know that a lot of the veterans who fought in that conflict are really not happy about that. And
What a disaster. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I've talked to a lot of guys who were there and just, yeah. So.
Did you ever go there? No.
Never, never. I had the opportunity in the agency, and I just, after working Iraq for 8 or 9 years, I think I was just like, I don't think I've got, I was starting to burn out quite a bit. And
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't think I can work another kind of like, I don't want to say, I don't know if I felt it was a losing war at the time, but just this never ending kind of like conflict that
Forever war. Yeah.
forever war. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it. So,
That's probably a good
and
call. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Well, it's been great talking to you, Seth. I gotta
Yeah.
leave it
Same
at
here.
that. This is a wonderful conversation. Just last question I'll ask you is what's kind of next for you? You just going to continue on writing and
Yeah,
doing your thing?
I don't have any super big projects. I kind of try to follow the news, since that seems to be what people are most interested in, is kind of when I kind of follow news events. But if, a big story comes my way, a chance to tell, there are some stories I'd still love to tell that I haven't had a chance to yet. But yeah. So right now I don't have anything cooking, but I'm sure
Yeah, just
something will
the
come along.
next big story. Well, it's been like a story. It's like every day there's something. So like I'm
Yeah.
sure you'll, yeah.
Yeah. Who are we going to go to
Okay.
war with next? Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Greenland's off for now, but I'm sure Canada,
Maybe,
maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it's
I
crazy,
don't,
crazy times right now. But I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. Again, I want to encourage people to go to Seth's Substack, check it out. He's got a lot of great writing there. And again, the podcasts are really interesting. And it's been great talking to you, Seth, and maybe we can do it again sometime.
yeah, I'd love it. I'd love to.
That'd be
I really
great.
enjoyed it. Thank you, Sean.
Sure thing. All right. And okay, so Seth, I was want to like last plug here. So he's at the After Action Report. And if you want to check out my site, American Vets in Defense of Democracy, that's avddemocracy.substack.com. So you can check out my site there. So that's it for us. Stay in the fight, and we'll talk soon.